Thank you very much, Nassia. And thank you to you all for joining today and for joining this session as well. We're here to talk a little around the commercial models for A2P SMS in the omnichannel market. So what I propose before we turn to the panel session is to speak for a few moments around some trends that we as Haud are seeing in the marketplace today, the impact of some of those trends, and then share with you a real-life use case to bring that to life. But after that sort of gloomy picture, there's reasons to be optimistic, and I'll share that with you as well, and then we'll bring in the panel. So before I begin, for those of you who are not familiar with Haud, we secure, monetize, automate, and partner with mobile operators to optimize their messaging revenues. We're very proud to be consistently voted #1 or a top-tier vendor in reports such as the Rocco report by our customers. And with that said, if we move on to the next slide. Magic, there we go. Let me talk about some of the trends that we see in the marketplace today. And the first of which has been commented upon in many industry fora, and it continues today. It is the increased termination rates that we see in the marketplace. And we'll talk a little around the impact of these continued increases in international termination rates in part of the conclusions. A couple of other things to mention here as well is refer to omnichannel and bypass and erosion. When I talk about erosion, what we're talking about here is traffic that maybe originates as A2P SMS, but is then delivered in a different way, often without the sender being aware of that transformation. And that's done to save money. Erosion is when we send the traffic to another channel and it's lost from the A2P SMS channel. Get that wrong. Bypass is when it's taken by the sender, manipulated in the channel and delivered in a different way. And then lastly, the high values attracted with these international termination rates create an attraction for bad actors, for fraudulent parties. There's always been some in this channel, but the increased termination rates continue to attract that. So what are the conclusions of seeing some of these trends? The first of which relates to the fraudulent piece, and that is around the high termination rates. And what we see there is trashing of traffic, of artificial entration of traffic, and also the artificial generation of traffic, which is resulting in a lack of trust or an erosion of trust in this marketplace. The second thing we see is around trying to address that and the challenge of that. There are so many parties to the chain here. How is it that we deal with it? Who is prepared to take the action on a revenue-generating channel? And that, again, is contributing to the erosion of trust. And then lastly, a word on exclusivity agreements. There are many, many valid reasons why exclusivity agreements can be entered into for good reasons. But there are also some downsides, and sometimes these present challenges and actually are even more attractive to the bad actors. Because of the short-term nature of some of these agreements, we observe that the commitments that are being made are sometimes difficult to achieve, and it can have a damaging impact on the industry as a result of people having to take action to try and honour the terms of those exclusivity agreements. So we are very concerned about that. And let me bring that briefly to life then with a real-life case study with very fresh data. I will not name the client for reasons that will become clear, but it basically takes you through a journey of 2021 to 2024. And first of all, we start off with the client when the rates are around USD 10 cents. And really what we're seeing here and trying to control is SymBox activity, And while the traffic volumes fluctuate quite a bit, by the end of the year, we feel we've got that pretty much under control, Move on to 2022, and the market rate increases a little bit, 13, 15 cents. And what we see is voice start to play a role with this particular client, voice bypass, voice OTP. And of note, towards the end of 2022, we start to see WhatsApp come into play. 2023, market rate continues to increase, in this particular case up to 20 cents. Yeah? And what we see here is a couple of things. First of which is the effect of the WhatsApp bypass, but also the hyperscalers. And by hyperscalers, I mean the Metas, the Googles of the world, yeah, starting to get pretty annoyed with this and start to take some interventions or actions by themselves, which further erodes that channel. And it is worth noting, I think Robert's presentation this morning mentioned that the OTP and number verification market's worth around $23 billion. What we see in some markets is that OTP traffic for international brands by the hyperscalers contributes up to 90% of the volume. And therefore, the industry is mining a finite resource there if the customers, the hyperscalers, start to get annoyed. And that's what you're starting to see in 2023. So I'll bring us to 2024 now, and the market rate continues to increase above 20 cents. In fact, we've seen 28 cents in some markets. And you continue to have various techniques for bypass, the erosion to other channels, and the hyperscalers continuing to take action such that the traffic is declining. And there's a really key tipping point on the left-hand side of that graph, which is where the price increases put through in the market by the MNO no longer counter-effect the decrease in volumes. So up until that point, by putting the price up, while the volumes had declined, they're still growing, right? But that is a key tipping point there and a real call to action, whereby the price increases and the volumes are resulting in net decline. So that's quite a gloomy picture. However, there are reasons for optimism. And Nick's provided some figures here, Nick Lane on the panel, which we'll show here as well, which shows the overall value of A2P SMS messaging and the overall market, including RCS and WhatsApp as well. And as you see, taken in culmination, it's actually growth. A fair bit of that growth is coming through WhatsApp quickly, and then RCM, RBM kicking in as well in the later years. So the message really here, in which we would like to discuss now, is around what is it that we can do to arrest the decline in A2P SMS, even return it to growth, and do that within the context of omnichannel. So, on that note, that brings us back to the topic, and we'll bring in our panel. So welcome. Thank you. So, if we may begin with our first question. What are the current commercial models dominating the A2P SMS landscape, and how are they adapting to an omni-channel framework? Now, who'd like to take that one first?
Thank you.
Victoria?
Of course. I'm always getting the first and the hardest one. So
oh, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, SMS is already here for ages. And normally during that time, we implemented a different kind of models. Flexibility is very important. Of course, if we are not able to adapt to the models that mobile network operators are bringing to the market, and of course, at the end, to try to bring it to the clients as simple as possible and then to understand the value, it's never going to succeed. But we have a lot of the different models. We have revenue share, we have per transaction, premium traffic, the one that you just mentioned at the beginning, which we are not anymore sure that is the best one, meaning the ones where you are committing to the volumes and becoming the exclusive providers there. So different one, how to adapt to the omni-channel world today. I mean, as well on Robert's first presentation, we saw that the complexity of the commercials model with WhatsApp and the RBM. So of course we don't want to bring additional complexity with the SMS in the new ecosystem. We are still seeing SMS as a predominant channel because of course of the reach and simplicity. And if we will bring additional complexity, it will go in an opposite way. What we want to eliminate, and I think would be healthier for everyone, to go out of these big exclusive models that are bringing the whole ecosystem and leading to the wrong direction. And what is the, let's say, reply from mobile network operators today when they're seeing the ecosystem and implementing of conversational models, etc. Now they are bringing some SMS conversational model as well. Some of them, not everyone, asking them how to bring the new models with SMS as well. So let's see, the whole point here is don't go into complexity as it is today with the WhatsApp and RCS when we talk about SMS OTP. Don't be greedy and kill your SMS business, because what happened in one of the country, I will not mention country, I will not mention operator. So one of the bigger players, the hyperscaler, they decided not to authenticate their users over that mobile network operators. If you want to authenticate yourself, you've received the message, if you want to use our service and be our client, please change your mobile network operators.
Wow.
So I'm not really sure that we don't want to go into that direction anymore. We should gain the trust. We should think about the value that we are bringing from the SMS world, that we are bringing to the clients, to the customers, because at the end they will be the one that will want the situation, and we should have the metrics to be able to let's say manage the information and data that we are having in order to be able to manage the channel. Because if we are not having that, then we not take our perspective that with channel we are bringing the value, and we just want to have the constant growth by raising the pricing every year. We will just went to the situation where SMS will die sooner than we all would like to. Yeah.
Thank you, Viktorija. Would anyone else like to comment? Otherwise, you tee me up very nicely for the next discussion point. Yeah. How can businesses balance the cost of A2P SMS with other messaging channels without compromising customer engagement?
I can take this one.
Thank you, Milorad.
Hi, everybody. I come from the enterprise sales world. So to me, I look at it from the challenge that the companies are facing instead of products that I'm trying to push. So when I approach a customer, and when my organization on a global level, they go after customers, they don't come in and say, hey, do you want this channel or that channel? We look at what is the problem you're having and what is the best way to solve it. Now, that includes all the channels that we have. So we approach it from a different perspective. So in theory, I don't really push one channel more than the other. The best solution that comes up usually is the one that decides what the channel is being pushed. I also like to combine other solutions than just the channels, right? So we have, for example, mobile intelligence, which looks into the accuracy and the data of the phone number that is coming in, and it improves the customer experience. And then on the other end, we also look at some of the guarantees, let's say, or service level agreements and ways of preventing, for example, this fraud that we're seeing, the attacks and the artificial traffic. So in the end, if you can guarantee to the customers that you have that they're not going to be overcharged, or if there is an attack, if you guarantee that they won't have to pay that massive bill, then you're opening up a different, let's say, revenue streams than just the channel itself.
Thank you. And if I may add, I think another point on the, not compromising the customer engagement. One of the things that we also see is when people have adopted Omnichannel's approach, one of SMS's benefits is its ubiquity. And so there is that degree of fallback sometimes when other channels don't work.
Exactly.
No data connection, for example. Yeah.
It also depends who your target market is, right? So at the moment, I've been focused on the big global organizations. They need a solution that's going to cover the whole world for them, right? So I can't go and offer, RCS, which only works in a few markets, or WhatsApp that is great in one market but non-existent in another. So I'm going in on a global level, and then we dig deeper and we solve the problems on a local level, let's say. So
Very good.
that covers that.
Thank you, Milo. Yeah. Any comments from anyone else? Or we'll move on. Yeah. So next question then for discussion really, and it leads on nicely again. What are the effective strategies for monetizing A2P SMS within the omni-channel approach?
Well, the obvious ones don't overcharge.
Indeed.
That's the problem. I mean, what we've started seeing in the research is, for example, where you've got high rates around the world in certain markets, certain operators, that's obviously driving companies onto other channels. But where you've got poor performance on other channels, so for example, in the US, lots of brands are using email, but in actual fact, it's such a poor experience for one-time password that they're now starting to shift that onto SMS. So, you know, it's changing depending on what the market is. So there's so many different variables to consider in terms of what the pricing is. But I think ultimately, if you want longevity within SMS, you can't charge basically over 10 cents, I think. And any company that does that will see a drop-off in traffic. So we know, I think, there are 70 markets around the world where all the major operators charge on average over 10 cents. And so it's continued to go up. So in the last 12 months, I think Africa, the average termination rate is on international. The average termination rate in Africa has gone up by 100%. I think in the Caribbean, it's still going up 60%. Asia's only up 20%, but then that's because it's pretty high already. West Europe is the only region where the average termination rate's actually gone down. So again, you know, but that's where you're seeing all the changes in traffic. So then, in theory, that's where you're going to see more fluctuation and more movement between the omnichannel, which you're starting to see. So obviously, in some markets, these pricing is obviously driving RCS and RBM and WhatsApp, for example. So you look at what's going to happen in Africa. You know, if you think all of the markets now, well, not all the markets, but where the price is going up, and obviously, you know, more and more aggregators in Africa are now starting to sell WhatsApp. So you kind of think you are going to start to see a bigger shift over the coming years. In fact, where we've modelled RCS over the next 5 years, by 2028, half of RCS RBM traffic will come from SMS migration. So in actual fact, RCS probably won't grow as fast as we expect it to grow, because all we're doing is shifting traffic from one channel in the omnichannel to another. You know, so that's kind of what's happening. So, you know, I think if we do want to start sharing, you know, kind of seeing growth across different channels, we need to start thinking about what role each channel actually has. So, for example, obviously Robert's talking about lots of different ways of how, like WhatsApp and RBM, for example, are going to try and monetize the channels. But in actual fact, if you look at the pricing, you know, we kind of see that there's a clear path for WhatsApp going after customer care and utility, which opens the door really for RCS to do marketing. And you think about it, it makes sense. Customer care is a $300 billion market, or plus, depending on other people's numbers. Marketing, Dentsu said is $750 billion this year, digital advertising. So again, if you start to shift some of that spend over, you can see actually where the growth is. But if all we're going to do is limit movement based on business models of SMS onto RCS, it's a $35 billion industry that we're shifting. So we've got to start thinking differently and bigger. And that's where I think you can then start to explore different business models.
And Nick, what role do you think differentiated pricing could then play in helping achieve that?
Well, other than per market. It comes down to what brands pay. So at the moment, brands are obviously paying upwards of 10x based on maybe what they're paying for the same service a couple of years ago. And, you know, they're walking from those markets. So you can see that ultimately the price has gone too far. Now, in our research, we know that quite a few operators will embrace differentiated pricing on SMS, for example, but more aggregators are buying into the concept of differentiated pricing. But again, you're still not really seeing prices go upwards of about 8 cents, depending on what the use case is. So typically, I think the view is that authentication and marketing brands will pay a higher premium, but obviously things like utility, etc., it would be lower, because I guess it depends on the usefulness.
Thank you.
So it can happen, but it comes down to what brands want to pay. And, you know, I kind of think where we set the precedent, and the issue here is SMS is still viewed as a broadcast channel by brands. So when you've got broadcast channel thinking, they then align SMS alongside in-app and email. So then they look at the cost to send an email against the cost which is pretty negligible across in-app and email. And that's kind of the issue that I think everyone's going to be facing if you do go down that. Not to say brands won't pay it, but I think it's a change of mindset, and it could be a tough sell in certain markets.
I mean, at the end, they are the ones that are calculating their return on investment as well, and the value that we are bringing with different channels. So they have opportunity to choose a different one. In some cases, of course, will be still the SMS because it's the quicker one, it's reliable one, it will deliver the message, etc. But if this is not the number one priority, and of course, if the price is not too high, they will go for something else. But they will use SMS for sure for some critical messages.
Just to add to that, I mean, switching from SMS to other channels does not, maybe at the moment, might be a cheaper solution or more economical, but these big players are not stupid. Meta's not going to go in and give a 50% discount towards SMS, so they're going to keep up to that. Viber has been doing that for a long time. They're just keeping it a few percentage points below the SMS. So ultimately,
but they're starting to see really strong growth in their markets, so it's working.
It is, but eventually the end customer will have the same challenge, even with the new channels, right? So we're just kind of switching it to that. That's why, if we look at what we're actually solving for the end customers and what really makes sense, and consult them to solve that solution and pick the right channels that make sense for them, then I think that's the long-term solution.
I think it's interesting, Nick, you mentioned SMS, A2P, being considered like a broadcast channel to an extent. I do wonder whether the pricing that's been adopted for WhatsApp for Business, for RBM and so forth, will help stimulate the different types of messaging and understanding that potentially there is opportunity within the MNO space as well for differentiated pricing on A2P SMS. Because I recall from ex-Vodafone Group, and the commercial models that are adopted by the MNOs did historically innovate quite a bit. The blending of traffic, for example, the different types of messaging being used on net, sending on to other parties and so forth. So the precedent is there if they choose to take the next step in this market as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's our view is that SMS should still be growing organically, given the amount of businesses that don't use SMS. We should see a good growth curve going for the foreseeable future. But because of pricing and various other elements, that's not happening. But, you're going to see good growth for WhatsApp now. RCS, we still think is a few years behind. But, as I'll show later, there's not really much growth beyond that across the omnichannel. Within CPaaS providers. That's just our view, and that's kind of what we're seeing in the marketplace, whereas voice is declining overall, whereas obviously customer care, what you want to do is chip into that and move some of that traffic and spend into the CPaaS. It's same with all the other non-messaging channels do the same. But ultimately, now I'm nearly finished, gave my big finale away from later, but I'll have to pause there and not finish that sentence.
Sorry, Nick. Oh, jeez. And it kind of leads us on to the industry, as in the finance, the retail, the healthcare industries. To what extent did they influence the commercial models in this as well? Do you feel, Milo?
I mean, every industry, every vertical, and every tier, let's say, has a different price point and a different model that they go after, right? So you have the smaller brands and SMBs. They're not that, they're willing to pay 20 cents a message. It's not a problem because they only send 100 messages, right? But when you go talk to the big players, they care about the 0.000 out there. So I think it's a big challenge. You have companies that are selling these products, but are not really marketing them that way. They're solving a problem. You got companies like Attentive and Klaviyo. They never talk about messaging. They're actually solving something different. So for them, there's a different way of pitching, and people are willing to pay the premium for the story as well as for the ROI that it brings.
Depends where your starting point is as well. Because if you're looking to move customer care voice call onto messaging, then obviously the average cost for an agent on a voice call is what, $5-6. So if you can then move that onto messaging, and it costs, well, if WhatsApp potentially free or whatever, on the conversational side, then it's a no-brainer from a brand's perspective. But if you're then going to go look at trying to then push up an SMS cost from 3 cents, let's say, to 8 cents, you've got to justify that. So what are you doing? Are you then going after like direct mail? Are you then trying to shift that over? In which case, it's a saving. But if it's a cost, if it's a cost increase, it has to be justified. If it's a saving, it's a no-brainer. So it just depends what your starting point is.
Thank you. So final question from me to the panel this morning. We've just got just under 3 minutes left. We've been very much talking here around the role of A2P, SMS and Omnichannel. What are the top challenges in integrating A2P SMS into the Omnichannel? And in your opinion, how best can they be overcome?
I mean, obviously, in Omnichannel, SMS by any statistic is still the primary channel. So it's there, and we all know how to use it and for which purpose. What is probably the biggest challenge is SMS cannot fulfill all the benefits that other rich channels can fulfill, especially in the marketing purpose. In a younger generation, they don't even know what is SMS. My daughter, she don't know what is SMS at all. So once we will go in the future, in a few years, for sure, SMS will suffer even a bit more, especially in the marketing purpose than today. Okay. Yeah.
Milo? From my side, I think one of the biggest challenges is all the regulations that are being added on a global level. So most of my customers are massive international organizations, and I need to onboard them in 20, 30, 50 markets, and every market has different rules and regulations, and that, if we can solve that for them efficiently, it helps.
Thank you.
I think we have to put the fraud into perspective with other channels, because I think there has been, an increase in fraud around AIT trashing, for example, but you've always had grey routes, and we've been saying for ages, not all grey routes are bad, sorry operators. But then you look at kind of where things are going, and again, the research, we're seeing that there's now a shift with operators and aggregators alike seeing a dip now in the threat that AIT is posing, and now smishing is becoming, on both international and domestic, plus grey and white traffic, as becoming the biggest threat now. So, kind of moving forward, things are changing, but when you compare the amount of fraud, you look at the average cost of a campaign, for example, on SMS against other channels and look at the percentage of that that's fraudulent, it's massively lower than pretty much every other channel going. So I think we've got to put that into perspective when we kind of look at things and go to market and still say SMS is one of the cleanest channels, WhatsApp, RCS are going to be even cleaner. So I think that's what we've got to look at.
It's a really interesting point given how much time we spend in, industry fora talking about needing to restore trust in the channel. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but at the end, all these other channels that are still not growing that fast and don't have that volume, they will have the same challenges in a few years, for sure. We just need to say SMS can go better than it's doing today and in future, for sure.
Very good. So reasons for hope, reasons for optimism. Well, on that note, I will hand back to Nassia. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. We have time for one question. Well, good news is that we're going on break. So if you come up with a question, you can ask it during the break. So we'll reconvene back in 20 minutes. So the break will be on your left-hand side as you're getting out of these doors. For those of you who joined us for breakfast, it's the same room. So I will see you in 20 minutes.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Milo. Thank you as well.